It started with the dust. That fine red Sedona dust that gets everywhere, in the seams of your clothes, under your fingernails, coating the back of your throat. I'd been in Arizona for 3 days on a work trip, a software conference at the Enchantment Resort, and my rental car, a white Jeep Cherokee, was caked in a layer of the stuff that looked like it had been dipped in rust. My colleague, Maya, was with me. We'd flown out from Chicago together, and we were sharing the driving duties. Though I'd done most of it, she was from marketing, brought along to schmooze and talk branding, and I was the tech guy, the one who was supposed to understand the architecture of the new platform we were pitching. We weren't friends, not really, but a week in a hotel together breeds a certain forced intimacy. And God, she was distracting. Maya had this way of existing that made it difficult to look anywhere else. She was tall, with long dark hair that fell in loose waves over her shoulders, her eyes were a warm brown, and she had a habit of biting her lower lip when she was thinking, her teeth pressing into the plush, glossy pink flesh. That day, she was wearing a simple white tank top and faded jeans that hugged her hips and thighs in a way that felt like a personal challenge. I kept catching myself staring at the way the denim stretched across her lap, or the subtle shift of her breasts against the cotton of her shirt when she moved her arm to adjust the air conditioning. "I feel like I'm breathing sand," she said, her voice cutting through the classic rock I had on the radio. She fanned her face with a conference pamphlet. "We have to get this off the car before we return it, that they'll charge us a fortune." I nodded, my eyes flicking from the road to the line of her neck, to the delicate silver chain that rested there. "There's a place just off the 89. I saw it on the way in. Looks like it's from the 50s. The Sedona Suds and Shine was exactly that. A relic that sat on a cracked concrete lot, flanked by a struggling palm tree and a billboard so sun-bleached the words were almost ghosts. The building was a low-slung, cinder-block affair painted a cheerful, peeling turquoise. The automated wash bay was a large, dark tunnel, its entrance a gaping mouth of hanging gray strips of cloth. Next to it were 2 ancient, coin-operated vacuum bays, their hoses coiled like sleeping snakes. I pulled the Jeep up to the payment kiosk, a rusty metal box with a faded credit card slot. The machine ate my card, the light blinked, and a sign lit up, "Proceed to Bay 1. "This place is creepy," Maya said, half-smile playing on her lips. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stretched, a movement that made my breath catch. The hem of her tank top rode up, exposing a sliver of tanned, smooth stomach. I looked away, feeling a flush of heat that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. "It's just old," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. I guided the car forward until the front tires hit the track. A loud clunk echoed through the vehicle as it engaged, and we were pulled slowly into the darkness of the tunnel. The world outside vanished, replaced by the roar of machinery. Thick, soapy foam slathered the windshield, obscuring the view completely. Giant, ragged cloth strips slapped against the hood and roof, a rhythmic, punishing sound. I turned off the radio. The silence in the car felt heavy, charged. I was hyper-aware of Maya next to me, the faint scent of her perfume, something with vanilla and sandalwood, mixing with the chemical smell of the soap. "I hate this part," she murmured, leaning forward slightly to peer into the sudsy oblivion. "It feels like you're being digested." I laughed, but it was a thin sound. She was right. The rhythmic thumping, the complete loss of control as the machine dragged us along, the artificial darkness. It was unsettling. My phone, sitting in the cup holder, buzzed once. A text. I glanced at it.no service. That was weird. We'd had full bars just outside. The high-pressure rinse cycle began, a deafening spray that sounded like a torrential downpour on the metal roof. Through the soapy mess on the windshield, I saw the blurred, colorful lights of the wash, blue, green, yellow, swirling in the cascade. And then, for a split second, I saw a shape. A dark, humanoid silhouette standing just outside my driver's side window, motionless amidst the chaotic water. My heart jumped. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Maya turned to me, her brow furrowed. "See what?" I stared at the window, but there was nothing there now, just soap and water. Nothing. Probably just a shadow from the machinery. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded slowly, her eyes searching my face. I could see the pulse beating at the base of her throat, a quick, fluttering rhythm. I had the sudden, inappropriate urge to press my lips right there, to feel that life beat against my mouth. I clenched my hands on the steering wheel, the knuckles turning white. The final cycle began. The air dryer that a hurricane-force wind screamed around the car, shaking it on its springs. The last of the water was blasted away from the glass, and the world outside began to resolve from the blur. And that's when we saw it. The windshield wasn't cleaned, that it was transformed. The dust and mud hadn't been washed away, they had been rearranged. On the glass, in perfect minute detail, was a miniature desert landscape. That it was a masterpiece rendered in dried red Sedona mud. There were tiny, intricately layered mesas and buttes, their sides showing strata of different colored earth. There was a miniature, twisting dry riverbed snaking through the center. There were even tiny, leafless trees dotting the scene, and a pale, crescent moon etched into a patch of cleaner glass for a sky that it was breathtaking, and it was impossible. "What the hell?" I whispered. Maya was silent, her mouth slightly agape. She leaned closer to the windshield, her fingers hovering just above the dashboard as if afraid to touch the glass. How did it do that?" The machine had finished. The track released us with another clunk, and we rolled slowly out into the bright, unforgiving sunlight of the exit lane. I hit the brakes and we just sat there, staring. It wasn't a random pattern. It was a specific place. That I recognized the distinctive, bell-shaped curve of coffee pot rock in the distance of the mud dash painting. It was a view you could see from certain trails, a view I'd hiked past just yesterday. "That's not possible," I said again, my mind racing through logical explanations. "That a fluke of the water pressure? A strange chemical reaction with the soap and the particular composition of the dust?" None of it held up. The level of detail was artistic, intentional. "It's beautiful," Maya said, her voice soft with awe. Then she shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. "And really, really creepy." I finally put the car in park and got out, my eyes glued to the windshield. Up close, it was even more detailed. That I could see tiny cracks in the mud that looked like footpaths, and specks of darker dirt that formed shadows. That it was a perfect, scaled-down diorama of a Sedona vista. That's when I noticed him. He was standing by the coin-operated vacuums, leaning against the cinderblock wall as if he'd been waiting there for hours. A man, probably in his late 50s or early 60s, with lean, leathery skin tanned the color of old mahogany. That he wore a stained, wide-brimmed hat and a denim jacket that was too heavy for the heat. His eyes were hidden in the shadow of the hat's brim, but I could feel them on me. He wasn't looking at me, though. He was looking at the windshield, a faint, unreadable smile on his thin, cracked lips. My skin crawled. I had a sudden, certain feeling that this was the silhouette I'd seen in the wash. "Let's just go," Maya said from the passenger seat, her voice tight. That she'd seen him too. I nodded, my mouth dry. I got back in, the door closing with a solid thunk that felt insufficient, like it wouldn't keep anything out. As I fumbled with the gear shift, the man began to walk towards us. He moved with a strange, fluid grace that belied his age, his boots making no sound on the cracked asphalt. He didn't stop at my window. He walked directly to the front of the Jeep and stopped, staring at the mud painting on the windshield. He reached out a single long finger, its nail thick and yellowed, and traced the outline of one of the tiny mesas. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking. I rolled down the window. "What are you doing?" He ignored me completely. He finished his tracing, then looked up, and for the first time his eyes met mine. They were a pale, milky blue, the color of a winter sky, and they held no emotion whatsoever. They were the eyes of a predator assessing prey, or a geologist assessing a rock. There was no difference. "You found my gallery," he said. His voice was a dry rasp, like stones grinding together. "You're what?" I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. He gestured vaguely at the windshield. "The land speaks. Most people are too loud to hear it, their cars are too clean." He tilted his head, his gaze shifting past me, to Maya. I saw his eyes travel down from her face, over her chest, and back up again. It wasn't a look of lust, not like the conflicted, guilty heat I felt. It was a look of cataloging, like she was another feature of the landscape. "You two are quiet, for now." He tapped the hood of the Jeep twice with his knuckles, a sharp, final sound, then he turned and walked away around the corner of the turquoise building, and was gone. We sat in stunned silence for a full minute. The only sound was the hum of the Jeep's engine and my own ragged breathing. "What the fuck was that?" Maya finally breathed out. "I don't know," I said, putting the car in drive and pulling out of the suds and shine lot faster than was safe. I didn't look back. We drove in silence for a while, the impossible landscape still dominating our view that I had to crane my neck to see around it, the world outside distorted and framed by the intricate mud. We should wash it off, Maya said, at the hotel. Use the hose. Yeah, I agreed, but a part of me was reluctant that it was a work of art, however it had been created, and it felt significant. The man's words echoed in my head. Asterisk, you found my gallery. Asterisk, we got back to the Enchantment Resort, a sprawling, beautiful place built into the red rocks, but the luxury felt hollow now, a thin veneer over something ancient and strange. That I pulled the Jeep into a secluded spot near the service area where I'd seen a water spigot. That I unwound the hose and turned it on. The water pressure was strong. That it should have obliterated the dried mud in seconds. That it didn't. The water sheeted over the detailed mesas and riverbeds, but when it cleared, the landscape was untouched. That it was as if it had been fired onto the glass in a kiln. What the hell? I muttered, spraying it again, closer this time. Nothing, the mud was hard as ceramic. Maya stood a few feet back, hugging herself. He did something to it, that guy. I dropped the hose, water pooling around my shoes. That a cold dread was seeping into my gut, replacing the initial shock. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a fluke. That I got back in the car and turned on the windshield wipers. They scraped painfully across the hardened mud, making a sound like nails on a chalkboard, but not a single speck came off. We were stuck with it. That night we had a dinner with clients. That I was distracted, my mind replaying the encounter at the car wash, the man's pale eyes, the feeling of his gaze on Maya. She wore a little black dress to dinner, and the way it hugged her curves, the way the fabric shifted over her hips as she walked, was a torment. My attraction to her was now tangled up with the fear, a sickening cocktail of desire and dread. That I'd catch myself staring at the smooth skin of her bare shoulders and then remember the man's clinical, appraising stare, and a chill would run down my spine. That I drank too much wine, trying to quiet the noise in my head. During a lull in the conversation, I pulled out my phone, idly scrolling through the photos I'd taken on my hike the day before. Scenic shots of red rocks, juniper trees, the wide blue sky. That I swiped to the last photo, a selfie I'd taken at the summit, the classic coffee pot rock formation in the background. My blood ran cold. There, in the background of the photo, standing at the edge of the frame near a scrubby bush, was the man from the car wash, his wide-brimmed hat, his denim jacket. That he was just standing there, looking not at the camera, but off into the distance, as if he belonged there. As if he was part of the scenery. But I was alone on that hike. That I remembered it clearly. The only sounds were the wind and my own footsteps. That I had been completely alone. That I showed the phone to Maya under the table. Her eyes widened, and her hand flew to her mouth. She looked from the phone to me, her face pale. When was this taken? Yesterday, I whispered. I was by myself. The rest of the dinner was a blur. That I made my excuses as soon as it was socially acceptable and practically fled to my room. That I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those milky blue eyes. That I heard the dry rasp of his voice. Asterisk, you are quiet, for now, star. The next morning the Jeep was still there, the mud landscape unmoved by the desert night. That we had one more day of the conference, and then our flight home the following morning. The plan was to drive back to Phoenix, return the car, and fly out. The thought of driving for 2 hours with that thing on the windshield was unbearable. I went to the front desk and asked about the car wash. The young woman at the concierge desk smiled brightly. Oh, the Suds and Shine? It's a local landmark. The owner is a real character. Keeps to himself. The owner? I asked, my throat tight. Yeah, an old guy. Walter, I think his name is. He's been there forever. They say he's a little touched. She tapped her temple. You know, from the sun, but harmless. Harmless, the word felt hollow. The final day of the conference dragged. During a breakout session on data security, my phone buzzed in my pocket. That I pulled it out, expecting a work email. It was a text message from an unknown number. No words. Just a single image. It was a photo, taken from a distance, through a window. It was me and Maya, sitting in the hotel restaurant last night. The angle was from outside, looking in. You could see the half-empty wine glasses, the remains of our dessert. You could see the way I was leaning towards her, the look on my face that was far more intimate than it should have been for a colleague. My breath caught in my throat. I looked around the conference room, but everyone was focused on the presenter. I showed the text to Maya, who was sitting next to me. She gasped softly. "Who is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. That I typed back, "Who is this?" The response was immediate. Another photo. This one was older. It was a picture of my apartment building in Chicago, taken from the street. My kitchen window was visible, the blinds open. A cold sweat broke out on my back. This wasn't just about Sedona. This had followed us. Or he had. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly on the floor. "I'm not feeling well," I mumbled to Maya, and I hurried out of the room. I needed air. I walked out of the resort's main building and into the stunning desert landscape, the very beauty of which now felt like a threat. The red rocks loomed, no longer majestic but menacing, their silence feeling watchful. I found myself standing by the jeep, staring at the mud painting. The longer I looked, the more I saw. I saw a tiny, detailed representation of the hotel we were staying in. I saw the hiking trail I'd been on, and there, near the edge, was a tiny figure. A man with a wide-brimmed hat, and he was standing next to two other, smaller figures. One of them had long, dark hair, the other was me. He had put us in his diorama. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "It's time to be quiet." I spun around, my heart in my throat. The parking lot was empty. The resort was quiet. But I felt watched. I felt seen, in a way that was deeper than vision, as if the very land was aware of me. That evening we packed in a frenzy. We decided we would leave that night, drive to Phoenix, and get a hotel by the airport. We just had to get out of Sedona. The place felt cursed. Maya came to my room to finalize the plan. She was wearing yoga pants and a tight t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired and scared, and the vulnerability made her even more beautiful, a fact that filled me with a fresh wave of self-loathing. My eyes were drawn to the shape of her